My childhood, we got through it, and I've done a lot of healing since to reconnect with my inner child, but it was turbulent, it was all over the place, it was a bit insecure, but at the same time, there was never a time that I didn't feel love.
Tell us about maybe just some of your formative years, what they've been like, and then especially in relation to faith and spirituality and just your experience of that. We'd love to hear about that.
You know that song, The Goodness of God, All My Life?
Yeah.
Now that I have my own relationship with Jesus, I'm like, you have truly been chasing after me since I came out the womb.
We all knew, okay, there's something going on. If you don't believe anything, you are not in control of your life. And people search, and I agree, the language that came out of lockdown was very much a source of power, but no one wanting to profess the name like God or Jesus.
Welcome to the Magnify Conversations. My name's Ruth, and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And my name's Rachel, and I'm one of the hosts of this podcast.
Magnify is a global community and content platform focused on equipping women like you to grow in and impact your sphere of influence. We truly want to see you thrive in all areas of life and want to display what faith can look like at the centre of that too.
We started the conversations because we wanted to have real discussions about things that matter. Money, relationships, and work, all through the lens of faith and our relationship with God.
Ultimately, we know as multifaceted women, things are rarely one size fits all. So we speak with many different women who are from our community and hear their stories. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Magnify Conversations.
Today, we are sitting down to chat about the journey of coming to faith as an adult with our guest, Joey Darlinn.
Joey is a multifaceted creative with a background in content creation and inclusive marketing. She now works full-time as a social media and influencer manager.
It was so interesting to hear about Joey's journey into faith, how that tangibly changed her life across work and relationships, and also how she's navigated the reaction of her decision from those around her.
Let's get into this conversation. So I'm so excited to have this conversation today. Joey, thanks for joining us. We're going to be hearing a bit of your story about how you came to faith and your kind of journey of life, and just as an adult, how that can be being part of a church, some kind of maybe touching on some cultural norms that in the church and how all of that works. So super excited to hear your story. But first, I wanted to start with some icebreakers, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Right, first question. What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, my goodness.
This is really basic.
I'm actually really blessed to get really good advice.
That's
Can't
good.
lie. Have you got an answer?
I was just going to say, this is a really basic one, though, but you can't have a hot and cold drink at the same time, because you absolutely can. Like,
what do you mean? So a cup of tea and a glass of wine?
Yeah, glass of wine,
all the time.
tea. I do it all the time now, but people are like, you can't have both. Yes, you can. So, I say that.
Don't limit my life. What's the worst advice I've ever been given? I don't actually know. I can't, nothing's coming to my mind to be able to answer that, because I'm very fortunate to have a lot of wisdom around me.
Yeah.
There probably is, but
nothing that's coming to mind.
Nothing comes to mind. That's good.
That's cool. Let's go to the next one. What's the worst film or TV show that you have watched?
So many. There's one, I don't remember the name because it was that bad, but it was about her husband faked his death, and then she actually is the one that killed him. It was terrible. Oh. It was on Netflix recently, actually. It was like, fool me once. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I will never watch it again. Yeah.
I saw that. It was disappointing.
Terrible. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if it was called Queen of the South.
Oh,
that show was so traumatic. Am I thinking of the right one about the cartel?
Yeah.
It was too traumatic. I couldn't watch that.
Oh, I've not heard of that. Yeah. Listen, I'm going to say this, it might be controversial for some people.
Yeah.
Emily in Paris? No, sorry. I love the setting and I love Paris. So I love the fashion, I love the setting.
It is cliche.
The acting, acting is so corny, bad. I'm really sorry, Lily Collins. I want to like her, but I'm like, guys, come on.
No, I hear it. I hear it.
I understand.
I love it for escapism, but that's it. Right, last one. What's the best habit you've adopted that has changed your day?
Accountability.
Ooh.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm very much into grace, obviously, and I'm very much a soft life princess, by choice. But I think since turning 30, I've very much been a girl who's like, no, you need to do this, you have responsibilities, so be accountable, get it done, and rest afterwards. And it genuinely has changed my life.
That's so good. I wish I could say that. That's so good.
I think mine is just not going on my phone first thing in the morning. So looking at the time, but then putting it down.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. I think similar to mine, just disengaging from the phone. Sometimes I let my phone battery die on purpose so that...
Oh, yeah.
That's actually a really good
Yeah, just to let it go.
I'm part of that club.
Yeah.
But then I put it on 10 seconds.
Just going to check if anybody's contacted me. Amazing. Well, Joey, I'd just love to hear a little bit about your life and your story, because that's going to set us up for this whole conversation.
Okay.
Tell us about maybe just some of your formative years, what they've been like, and then especially in relation to faith and spirituality and just your experience of that. We'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so I am the youngest of 4 siblings. I have a brother and 2 sisters. I had a 2-parent family up until I was 16 when my dad passed away. But grew up, my mum's career, she was a landlady, so I actually grew up in pubs. So I grew up in environments filled with adults, when I was young, I was taken care of, I was loved. It felt like community, but when you step away as an adult, you're like, wow, I was really in that environment as a young adolescent. I also grew up around a lot of domestic abuse. So I think my childhood, we got through it, and I've done a lot of healing since to reconnect with my inner child, but it was turbulent, it was all over the place, it was a bit insecure, but at the same time, there was never a time that I didn't feel loved. And then moving into my teen years, kind of focused all my energy, which now, again, looking back, I was clearly just absolutely to the brim with trauma and I needed a focus, but I focused all of my energy on being the achiever in the family as the youngest child. I wanted to fill the gaps of what my older siblings kind of couldn't do or didn't do because, again, they were living the same upbringing I had, but they had different roles in it. My elder sister was very much the mother figure because mum was always working, stuff like that. So threw myself into my studies and sport. I played sport a lot. I actually played basketball to quite a high level. I was in the national squad, but then just couldn't commit to it to take it further. And that is one of my biggest regrets in life, not going to the States on a scholarship. And then Dad passed about 2 weeks before my GCSEs. So then we kind of got thrown into a new version of trauma autopilot. I was the only one left at home at that point, so I kind of became, and my mum's been sick since I was about 11. She's had cancer a couple of times, and from that, the treatment with cancer can do other things to the body, so she just has been unwell and not worked since I was about 14, I think. So when Dad passed, I kind of just became mum's stand-in husband, if you like. She might watch this and be like, what are you talking about? Don't lie, Mum. And I was literally just on autopilot trying to get through and still do what I wanted to do with my life, and got through my A-levels, praise be to God. Did well, still achieved, had so much support from my teachers in high school, then went to university. Didn't like the university I went to initially, so dropped out. And Mum was sick in my first year, so I was commuting a lot from Leeds to Cheshire, which was difficult. But anyway, we pivoted, which I said in my interview for this, I'm a professional pivoter. If there's one thing God has always given me the wisdom and the courage to do, it's pivot. So we pivoted, and I managed to go to the university of my choice after getting some more credits through a college course, graduated, got my degree, and here we are, 10, 11 years later, just doing everything and more that I wanted to. I kind of tried to keep that short because I could talk about my life. We could talk in chapters about my life, which if you want to pull some chapters out, feel free to. But that's an overview. Yeah,
so in terms of faith and your Christianity and just your experience of spirituality in general, can you talk a little bit to that? So have you, growing up, did you have any influences like that were faith-filled or spiritual, and have they also impacted like where you are now?
Yes. So with what I said about my upbringing and living in pubs, that would mean that my mum was very good at her job, so she'd be given projects. We owned a couple of pubs, but then after that, she was given projects. So she would be given a pub by a brewery that was kind of failing. She'd go in, turn it around, and then we'd be on to the next one. So in that kind of cycle, I lived with my nan a lot, which was my mum's mum. And she was a disciple of Jesus. Yeah. She really was. Catholic church, I went to a Catholic primary school and a Catholic high school. So I was kind of brought up with the Bible, with the stories of the Bible and with the Catholic interpretation of God and Jesus. But my nan kind of introduced me to like a prayer routine, and there was crucifixes all around the house. Jesus's face was all around the house. So I wasn't connected to it at the time. I was just doing what I was told by the person that was taking care of me. And then because of that, I would be going to church. I'd go to after school church events with my nan. And my primary school was, at the time that I went to it, was the best in the area academically, and they did a lot of kind of trips to Lourdes, and our priest at the time was really good. So Catholicism, Jesus and God were really prevalent in my life, both through education, but when I look back now, and what I was going to touch on before we started, you know that song, The Goodness of God, All My Life?
Yeah.
Now that I have my own relationship with Jesus, I'm like, you have truly been chasing after me since I came out the womb. And it's just so beautiful. And he clearly used my nan as a vehicle for that, although I wasn't as receptive to it. But then, so I lost my dad at 16, but previous to that, so grief for me started at 14. I lost my uncle first, and then I lost my grandma. In the space of 5 years, I lost 5 family members: my uncle, my grandma, my dad, my granddad, and my nan. So at around about 14, and I think a lot of people have this tug and war at some point in their faith, because, you know, you're introduced to God and you're introduced to Jesus, and you read all these stories in scripture about how God is before you and he works everything for your good and he wants nothing for you but to prosper you. And then you experience all this pain. At a young age, not only grief, but what I'd gone through previous, and I think I just hit my quota. And I was like, I'm done. There's no way there is someone that is looking out for me, that cares about my well-being, when all I seem to be experiencing is pain and grief and misfortune and not quite coming up to the mark of like just a healthy life. So then I would say from about 15 to about 18, I had no faith. I was just out in the world, just living on autopilot, clearly grieving, trying to show up for my mum, and just getting through every day, trying to stay on track for what I had with all this pain that I was harboring about. Gosh, when I think back. And then I got into a long-term relationship around 17, 18. A partner that I'm no longer with, but I was with him for like 9.5 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Really long time. Grew up with that person, like that person taught me so much. But his family were Jehovah's Witnesses on his mother's side. And in my search for sense in grief, I really enjoyed how Jehovah's Witnesses interpreted the Bible and logically kind of cross-referenced it to current happenings. It made sense to me, and I guess it gave me peace in my grief. I enjoyed going to their memorials, their kind of yearly celebrations. I enjoyed how they interpreted kind of what the afterlife meant, that actually people weren't dead, they were just sleeping. It gave me peace in my grief, and it made sense, and I needed logic because faith was just redundant at that point. So I never committed to the faith, but I kind of just, you know, I would listen to the wisdom of his older family members. They were high up in the community with witnesses. And I say faith was redundant, but I've always been a meant-to-be person. So if I was getting a message, I was like, God's speaking to me some way through this. And then at about 22, 23, turned to New Age.
Interesting.
You can see I've always, even though faith was redundant, I've always been searching for something, for an anchor. Just for an anchor and just for sense. And I truly believe so many things of how God is using me and why he put me in my family. And now that I'm getting closer in my connection, my relationship with him, it's all starting to make sense. But New Age at the time, it ran parallel with me doing CBT therapy.
Okay.
So it kind of, I guess, if you've ever done CBT, obviously you have to open the Pandora's box and unpack a lot. And sometimes you have to face yourself, even though your pain and your grief isn't caused by you. I definitely recognised that I had picked up some kind of behaviours and traits from my trauma and from my upbringing that weren't an identity that I wanted to have, and I didn't want to carry that with me. It's also partly the reason why I ended that long relationship, because I recognised that I was codependent and there was things that were growing inside of me that I just thought, I don't want this to be a part of my character and my identity. So regardless of if this is meant to be or not, I'm going to have to break away from it now so I can truly face myself and be alone. So New Age helped me in that area. Journaling, you know, things that I do now, but I do with scripture and with Christ, but it was just me and me. And then we are in 2024 now, so it will have been the end of 2021. And I was kind of coasting in life. I'd been a content creator for about 5 years, and I'd done so many incredible things in that journey, modelled, been a content creator. Then I became a mother agent and was trying to make a wave in the curve industry to create real inclusivity, because there was a lot of kind of performative inclusivity, and I've always been like, no, I can't. If I know something isn't righteous, I struggle to not try and break that cycle. Partnered with an incredible agency, the agency that scouted me, and kind of headed up their curve board and established what curve should look like. We got in the press, we made some waves. That was incredible, like a real purpose-driven part of my career. And then from that started my own agency, 11, which still geared towards the same kind of things, but meant that we worked in all areas, not just casting, like production. And I was in schools doing talks about body image, healthy use of social media, careers outside of academia, stuff like that. And I don't know, I just got to a place where everything felt like it was just going like this. And I just felt a bit lackluster and a bit like I was floating. And again, I needed that anchor and things weren't serving me. And again, clearly God was like, hey girl, you ready? So it was the new year and I was laying in my bed and I was just thinking, I need an anchor, I need a change, I need a routine. I could feel a pivot. I could feel a pivot on the horizon, and I thought a friend of mine had been going to a Pentecostal church for a couple of months, and I was like, yeah, I love that, because even when I say I've been kind of away from faith, I'm still sat at home listening to Sarah Jakes Roberts, or I'm still sat at home listening to worship and praise music, or a Kirk Franklin when I need. So I'm away from faith, but my spirit is naturally like, just still craving the vices in that season. So I was like, okay, my New Year's resolution is going to be to bring in church weekly. It's going to be my routine. So let's start at Pentecostal if we enjoy it. Maybe let's try the Catholic church again. Went to the church that my friend had been going to, and that is now my church that I've been baptised in, that I serve in, that I have not left since, because... And I believe I started going there in the December, and then in the following May, my mum got another cancer diagnosis. Glory to God, she's cancer-free now. But I truly believe that, again, he ushered me into that space so that I was in a place of faith, covered by people of faith in his house. Because if I didn't have that through that time, and I truly believe that it was a miracle, because we were given a terminal diagnosis of sorts at first, because my mum's health, as I mentioned, she already has kind of a plethora of other things. So she wasn't well enough to have certain treatments. And my mum also was a bit fed up of being unwell. So I had the conversation with my mum and I was like, listen, if you make the choice to not have treatment and we have 8 to 10 months with you, we'll have the best 8 to 10 months. Ooh,
it's a big decision.
we'll have the best 8 to 10 months that we can have. But if you want to try this and you want to do treatment, they referred us to kind of like a specialist radiologist, because her consultant at first was like, we don't think you will even be able to do radiology, because where the tumour was, it was on her vocal cord, in her throat, and it was on a joint, and because she has arthritis, there was just complications. But anyway, long story short, we got referred to the radiologist, and she was like, we're going to try it. We're going to do a course of 6 sessions, and we're going to see if we can... The idea was to shrink it, to stop it, and kind of give mum more time. I think we were given a 10 to 15% chance of cure, which is nothing to God, clearly. And then she made the decision to do the treatment. But I truly believe that the way I was prayed for, prayed over, prayed with in that time is what ushered God into that situation. Yeah. And was how God prompted my salvation. Right. Because I couldn't deny that he was real in my life. Like I actually, not only for the miracle in my mum's health and in curing that, but when I sat back after we got the all clear, I sat back and I looked at like the chronological order of what has happened, and I got so overwhelmed, because I was like, you truly are before me, and you truly care. It doesn't matter how many times I've turned my back, how many times I've said no or I've not come to you, you still the one out of the 99, and you still have come for me, you've set me up, you've covered me, and you've made sure I'm surrounded. And I just, from that moment on, I was like, okay. And then I got baptised, and I couldn't live without Jesus now in my life.
Wow, amazing.
I've got, so many questions. That's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Joey.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Sinead, one of your co-hosts.
We know so many of you already watch these conversations, so if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, hit the button now. It really helps this important content to reach even more women around the world and ensures we can keep bringing these conversations to you.
Let's get back into this episode.
One question I've got, because you talked about how you'd kind of got involved in New Age, and at the time that was really helping you, and perhaps some of the practices that you would do now, kind of under your relationship with God, you would have done then. Yeah. I think this is a real cultural problem actually at the minute now. Yes. There's a lot of cultural Christianity, professing Christ. Yes. I go to church, I follow Jesus, but also I'm using lots of interesting language that's in relating to New Age, and some practices that are kind of like, is that following God? So I'm interested, because you've been brought up with faith, but you've gone through different phases. Are there some things that you've had to shift from or change, or that you see very differently now?
Yeah, I'm still doing it. It's a constant process of surrender. And you'll know, dying to yourself. I'm very, very, again, I am so favoured. And when I get to the end of my life, I think he'll reveal why I'm so favoured, because I'm always surrounded with exactly what I need for what he wants from me in that time. And saying that now is just, wow. But I have incredible people around me in the church that mentor me and are disciples of faith to me. And I'm in that process at the moment of surrender and of dying to my flesh. And one of my mentors, Anita, she keeps saying to me, stop saying I. It's not I, it's Jesus. It's not I, it's not you. You're centering you, you're speaking from your flesh. And I'm having to just, the same way when you go to therapy and you have to unlearn things, you have to do that in your faith. Like, if I truly am professing that I know that God is before me, he's living and he's real in my life, I can't say he's not, because there's too much of a testimony across the whole of my life, let alone the last few years. Then I need to be obedient to honouring him and trying to grow my spirit as much as I can in that. So that looks like in times of trouble, or in times of stress, or in times of uncertainty, being surrendered. Because I know I'm anchored, and I know now that he is before me, and that even if in this season of my life it's hard and there's difficulty and I experience more trauma, God forbid, it's for a purpose. It's shaping me, it's molding me, it's going to be part of my testimony. So I think for me, yes, it's a never-ending cycle. And I know who I just spoke about, Anita, she even spoke, was serving in the business community in my church on Wednesday, and we were catching up, and she was like, had a death. I was like, what? She was like, no, just death of flesh. I was like, okay. And even her now, she's so wise. She's so anointed. But she's in a cycle right now with one thing that God revealed to her where she's having to surrender it. I think we're on a walk, again.
Yeah, it's a journey.
Faith language, but we are on a walk. Like, and I think I'll be doing this forever. And I'll get it wrong, we all will. And sometimes I do try and do things by my own strength and by my own understanding. And then I have to stop and sit down and be like, no, be surrendered. So I think what I like to see at the moment is there is, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, there is an uplift or a rise in not only the conversation of God in the mainstream, but Jesus' name.
Yeah.
Jesus' name is being mentioned now more than ever, which gives me hope. And I think he's gearing up to kind of level out what you're saying, because New Age is really easy for people to fall into because it's just yourself. Like, that's your accountability partner, yourself. But I think it's a process.
And I feel like New Age was very much a subculture 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And now it's like literally so in the mainstream everywhere.
It did used to be seen as kind of quirky and a little bit weird.
Maybe not 5 years ago, but it feels like all of a sudden.
You know what I feel like made it rise? Lockdown.
Lockdown. People were searching. I think in that, again, like traumatic
just for a higher meaning and a higher power.
They were like, we all knew, okay, there's something going on. If you don't believe anything, you are not in control of your life. And people search. And I agree, the language that came out of lockdown was very much a source of power, but no one wanting to profess the name like God or Jesus to it. It was just, something told me and I've manifested this. And I mean, that stuff really grinds my gears, but I understood that people are searching, and even like listening to your story, I can just like see this like navigation, like floating like through, and you were just like going towards him, like he's coming toward. It sounds so like beautiful, honestly. I think also you said it in a beautiful way.
Thanks.
But I'm thinking about people who are searching, and I actually have this conversation a lot with people who can't connect and they read the books, they listen to Magnify conversations, and I know God is real, that there's someone bigger than me, but I can't connect, you know?
Do you know what I think that is? And I've been working through that in my previous season. I had the revelation about this personally, and now I'm practically working through it because I think that's a cycle as well. But I think that is a lack of belief that you're deserving, and there's some shame in that. Because if you can acknowledge that God is real, then if you're acknowledging he's real, why would you not acknowledge that he's for you, he's with you, and he wants the best for your life, unless you think somewhere you're not pure enough for that, you're not holy enough for that, you're not deserving of that. I had that revelation in my previous season, and I'm implementing things to get me closer to him, to kind of get rid of those thoughts and feelings. But I think I think that's what blocks people.
Yes, the grace, the goodness of God is just it's too simple. It's too easy. Also, somebody died for everything I'm gonna do, I will do, I did before.
Well, you don't judge me.
It's too easy.
You know what I did last week, last month, and you don't judge me. No, that doesn't make sense, because that's not what I know of humans. We categorize God as a human as well. That's another thing that happens. And that's another thing that keeps a barrier between people and God. Like, I do it myself. Sometimes if I'm in need, I'm like, how many people are in the world? Like, there's no way. But he's spirit. Like, I can't try and make you a human, because then I'm not understanding you.
His ways are high.
So I think that also people kind of make him human.
Through this whole kind of your last few years, last kind of 10 to 15 years of your life, how has, because you've obviously just had different kind of phases of understanding your faith, understanding God, looking at different things. What have kind of your like friendships looked like through that? Have people around you as well, as you've really come into this point of your life where you've decided, no, I'm following God, that's quite a clear decision for you, even just in the way that you speak. How have others around you responded to that, reacted to that?
It's a very interesting question. Friendship has never been something that has been easy for me. Not even necessarily easy. It's never been something that has felt... I don't know how to articulate it, but I've never found my feet easily with friendship. And I think looking back now, I love my sisters so much, and reflecting on how and what we were brought up in. I know they did the best they can with what they could, but I think, and again, therapy revealed it to me, but I wasn't taught friendship early with my siblings, like you're supposed to or can be. So through that journey, I mean, I have friends that aren't with faith that come to church with me. And some friends that have seen my journey are like, girl, I want to come to church. Some people that have seen my journey and are seeing how God is kind of changing me and changing my life are like asking me questions about why. Like one of my oldest friends, I've only got a couple of friends from kind of way back when I was a teenager. And one of my oldest friends, at my 30th birthday, we went away for a couple of days and we would just lay on the bed and she was like, right, okay, why Jesus? Right. She was like, why God? Why now? And I said, one, I gave the testimony of Mum's illness and the chronological order of everything I'd put in. I told her about how eager I'd always been. And I also said, there's no way that I'm going to experience this much trauma in my life and it not be a testimony. Are you crazy? My heart is gorgeous. My spirit is gorgeous. I have been through things in life that have shaped me in ways that meant in seasons I've showed up in ways that I am not proud of. But my true nature is beautiful, and I know I've been made that way. And I also said that, like, the lack of a father figure in my life, I think one of the things that made me turn to God and Jesus was I was craving connection. I wanted connection. And when you're hungry, that's when he shows up. We know that. So to answer your question, it's multifaceted. Some friends, I now don't have some friendships because there's no alignment. And again, being surrendered to God's will, you have to be able to just walk with him and let go of whatever he feels isn't meant to be with you in whatever season, for whatever reason. So some friendships I don't have, but then they've been, I don't want to say replaced, because all the friendships I've had in my life have been so abundant and beautiful in whatever season I've had them. And anyone that's shared a space in my heart, I love dearly. But they have been kind of, I don't know what to say instead of replace, but I now have friends from church and from faith that I couldn't live without now, that speak life over me and that convict me and that God uses to draw me closer and to continue this walk. And then I do have people who don't believe in God that have been my friends for years that come and sit in church with me, or that if they're having a bad day, I'll send them scripture and they're like, okay, auntie. So it's multifaceted.
But have you ever been like, had such a strong reaction to, because there is sometimes a language when people get saved or they start to come to Christ, even the name Jesus, it can make people feel a bit uncomfortable, right? And so have you had relationships where unfortunately, it's been like a reaction, or it's been, you're not making any sense, like you're being brainwashed, you know, anything like that where...
Never that, because even before Christ, I've always been a person of grace and integrity anyway, so I don't really have friendships with people who don't share them qualities. Like if anyone was, I wouldn't be friends with someone like that, but there has been some instances where it's become sensitive and there's become a disjoint in like communication just doesn't make sense because it's people might feel attacked when you're becoming righteous, if you like, for want of a better words, or, you know, as I say, I've always been graceful and soft. Well, from about 18, because I channeled my grief in anger in my teen years. But I've always been graceful and soft, and I feel like now also that is a true nature of like the Spirit of Christ in me. And I guess some friendships tried to tear me away from that, and I'm like, well, no, because that's not the character that God wants me to have. So there's never been anything where, like I say, I would never, even before Christ, have had friends like that. I've always kind of had people around me that have reflected the goodness I want in my life. But there's just been a disjoint. And there has definitely been a couple of friendships that have died because of the righteousness kind of becoming something that stood in between instead of it being supportive and nurturing. It's like, oh, you think you're higher than thou, and that kind of vibe, which is fine. It's just, it's not a forever friendship.
Part of something we've been doing on the Magnify Conversations is people sending in their audience dilemmas in relation to the topic that we're speaking about. So I've got one that I would love to ask you, Joey, and just get you to weigh in on. And so they said this: I want to know more about Jesus, and I know the best place to do this is at a church, but I'm scared about attending. I feel like all I hear about is the scandals that go on in them, and I don't want to be deterred from my faith journey. Do you have any tips for finding a good church?
My advice to this wouldn't be church related, because I think the best way to get to know Jesus is in the Bible. And I think if you don't know Jesus, just read the 4 Gospels. What helped me really, I started my faith with God. And then about a year in, I veered towards Jesus and understood that for me to embody the qualities that I wanted to embody as a believer of Christ, and to really be surrendered to the journey, that I needed to understand Jesus' character. Another piece of wisdom I was given from one of my mentors in the church. And I think when I got into Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I really, if this person is hungry for a relationship, then there's something about the stories of Jesus in those Gospels that just spiritually connects you to him and gives you peace and makes you feel loved and just gives you a really intimate relationship with Jesus. And I think having that like kind of in your toolkit to then step into church would eradicate any possible bad situations that could happen. However, what I will say is church is incredible. Church is the house where you find community, where Jesus can be in a space with you and use people, and whether it's a word or anything, to kind of connect with you. So just don't be scared and just pray. Like, prayer is so powerful. And if you are hungry, like we said before, when you're hungry, that's when he comes knocking. So if this person is hungry, he's here, he's ready, and he's excited to have a journey with you. So pray before you go to church. Pray for a revelation. Pray for God to speak to you. Pray for a certain person to stand out, and just read the Gospels, get to know Jesus, pray, and go to church. There's nothing to be scared of.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. And then lastly, as we are a community, we love to just know how we can support you, how we can support what you're doing, or where we can find you online.
Oh, this is quite a difficult one for me because I'm in a pivot. So, I mean, I'm still active on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram, Joey Darlinn, 2 N's, no G. I have a lot of things that are in kind of the cupboard that in the next year or 18 months, I'm praying on that God will align me with the timing of when he wants me to birth these things. But right now, I'm just a corporate girly. I'm back on the other side of things. So, yeah, follow me on socials. I do definitely do daily deposits, and I still share parts of my life on there. But yeah, I'm kind of actively inactive at the moment because God's working on me. God's working on me, but it's coming. So yeah, socials, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Joey. We really appreciate that.
So fast.
Yeah, it did. But thanks for your vulnerability and just your encouragement as well, I think. Yeah.
You're
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for joining us for this week's conversation. We hope you gleaned as much from it as we did.
If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with all of our episodes at the Magnify Conversations.
And if you have a story to share and would like to be featured on the conversations, get in touch with Team Magnify through magnifycollective.com and head over to our contact form.
We'll see you next Monday for another installment from all of our team and crew. See you next week.